Okay, I am recording now. Let's see, so we've got everybody. Did you get the link I sent you?
Yeah, I clicked on it and it's just says connected.
Oh, well, maybe I won't let you in yet.
Oh, okay.
But I don't see you on here.
I typed my name in.
Hmm.
I'll redo it.
Yeah, try it again, because you're not showing up on the attendee list. Sorry, everybody, I should mute myself.
Hey, Michelle.
David, it looks like it's 4:30. Are we okay to get started? David, you're muted, so I can't, if you responded, I can't hear you.
Sorry about that. Yes, let's please get started.
Okay. Good evening or afternoon, whatever it may be right now. And welcome to the February 1st, 2021 meeting of the City of Charleston's Design Review Board. My name is Erica Chase, the board chairperson. The members that we have with us tonight are Dinos Leolio, Jeff Johnson, Aaron Stevens, Andy Smith, and Michelle Smith. The members of city staff are David Meeks and Velvet Johnson. Velvet Simmons. We do not have any agenda items that have been deferred, and we do not have any recusals for tonight's agenda items. The order of the meeting will be as follows. David will give a project overview for any new items. Then the applicant will then have the project presentation. We do limit those to 10 minutes. Obviously, with virtual meetings, we have a little bit of flexibility. So at the beginning of your presentation, if you need time beyond 10 minutes, please let us know so we can adjust the time clock. We will then have a time for board questions and then a public comment period. That time is also limited to 10 minutes. However, we do not have any members of the public registered to speak tonight, nor did we receive any submitted emails or letters for the public record. David will then give city staff recommendations, and then the applicant may respond or clarify to David's staff comments. That is a 5-minute time limit. We then have time for board discussion. And during this time, the applicant may only clarify inaccurate information when recognized by myself or one of the board members, and otherwise may only speak if asked a question by the board. We will then have a board motion and a vote. I do want to remind everyone to please state your name for the record when speaking, especially during the virtual meetings. If you could, for everyone to please silence all cell phones and other devices that may make noise during this time. I'm going to skip over the public comment items since we have none this evening, and then jump to the virtual meeting protocol. Staff will control the PowerPoint presentation, which includes everything submitted by the applicant by the deadline in accordance with the submittal requirements. Applicants simply need to ask staff to advance to the next slide during your presentation. Applicant, staff, and board members are required to give their name whenever speaking. The video and microphone features have been disabled for all attendees. Attendees will only be given the capabilities to speak when they are called on during the public comment period. The chat and Q&A functions have been disabled for everyone. Again, I'm going to skip over any public comment items since we have none this evening. And I'll skip over recusal since we have none. Staff will be issuing meeting results, including staff comments and board motions to the applicant following the meeting. Results will also be posted on the city website listed on the slide shown right now. And then for additional information, there is an email address and a website for additional information. And I do want to remind everyone that our meeting is being recorded. So with that, we will get started with item number 1, Glenn Mcconnell and West Wildcat Boulevard, requesting preliminary approval for the construction of a gas station, car wash, and convenience store.
Erica, I do have just a few context slides here just to show people where the project is.
Okay.
This is agenda item number 1, Glenn Mcconnell at West Wildcat Boulevard. It's going to be a Spinks gas station. And you can see the location here in the red circle off of Glenn Mcconnell and West Wildcat. Here's a closer view of the site. And there will be a buffer between the new development and Glenn Mcconnell. And then a view from Glenn Mcconnell looking into the site. Again, looking into the site, this is the buffer that will remain the first, I believe 50 feet, maybe it's 75. You know, if we could ask the applicant that. And then again, looking into the site. And with that, I'll turn it over to the applicant. Ken, are you up? Can you hear me?
Hey, David, this is Andrew with HLA. Ken, it looks like he's not been promoted as a panelist.
Let me try again here. Is he, I think he's GBM. He should be a panelist and able to talk now.
GBN is the owner from Spinks.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I believe Ken is under the participants.
Well, I don't think he registered with his full name. Oh, wait, here it is. I'm sorry. I assume this is him. It says Ken. Sorry about that. So, Ken, you should be able to speak now in a second.
David, can you hear me now?
Yes, I can. Hi, Ken.
Perfect. Yeah, thank you very much, board and David. We basically have gone back through and refined our documents based on our conceptual design approval, and the project has basically stayed very much the same as it was before, with the exception of the fact that we've made a number of refinements to the site required by TRC, and then we've also addressed board comments from the conceptual design approval. I want to run through those very quickly. One of them is that we have a pierced brick screen wall running along West Wildcat. And at one time we talked about making that a little bit taller, but because we have a patio there, and in terms of having sight lines from that patio and being able to at least see something from that area, we wanted to leave it at 3 feet 4 inches. We do think that cuts off the screening of car fenders and things, but gives us appropriate sight lines there. And that detail is shown in our drawing sheet A1.2. The second comment board made in response to staff comments was to show the site plan on the site plan, show the wall more clearly, make sure, and you can see, I believe it's that red line that runs along West Wildcat. So we responded to that comment. Another comment that we had was there was a transformer that was located there in the lower right-hand corner of the convenience store. And we've since moved that away from the street front and moved it toward the trash enclosure just up above those parking spaces. To the left there, David?
Okay. Oh,
Yeah, right there, that little X. We've located in that area there to get it off of the road street front and probably screen it as much as possible. And it's hidden behind the screen wall for the trash enclosure. And then finally, there was a request to show north arrows on all of the site plans, and that has been done. Furthermore, there were other comments made by the board to add pond edge plantings, which we have done. And by the way, Andrew Todd Burke is here, and I'm going to go through these comments quickly and then let him respond to questions there regarding the detail there. The plant palette has also been simplified, and it consists mostly of native plantings. So that was a comment that was made before. The brick screen wall has been extended for the full length of the West Wildcat right away. And then on the building, we have recessed all of the curtain walls, storefront, and door openings as requested, as deep as they can be set back. And then we did not really provide a roof plan, but we did show all the rooftop mechanical units on our elevations. So you could see that all of them are below the line of the parapet on the building. The only other thing that I wanted to mention is that originally on the design before, we did have downspouts and collector boxes on the outside of the building. And we've done a revised elevation. You can see that elevation 3B. We deleted on the car wash and on the convenience store. We have deleted all of the downspouts and have created internal drainage. Other than that, the design is pretty much addresses all the comments and all the things that we had talked about in our last meeting, and is pretty much the same from everything else we've done. Andrew, is there anything else you'd like to add landscape wise or planting wise?
No, sir, you covered it, but I am definitely here to answer any questions that the board may have.
We've also updated, one thing I will say is we've updated the renderings to reflect the current plantings along the West Wildcat street front. We've also revised the streetscape elevations, color elevations, to show those plantings accurately in coordination with the landscape plans. And then we've provided a whole series of wall sections to show you how we intend to construct the building.
Thank you. Any questions from the board? Okay.
Thank
We have
you,
no
Erica.
Thank you. We have no public comments. So David, if you could please give your staff recommendations.
Sure. Thank you, Erica. Okay, so staff comment number one. The applicant was asked to increase the height of the brick screen wall to 4 feet height, but they've chosen to keep this at 3'4". Since the board allowed this wall height for the Parker's gas station on San Rittenberg, DRB is okay with the wall height remaining at 3 feet 4 inches instead of 4 feet. Number two, there's a note on the site plan calling out the wall height 3 feet, but the wall detail calls out 3 feet 4. Please revise the note on the site plan to read 3 feet 4 as well. Number three, the board had asked the applicant to consolidate and show the roof mechanical. Now I missed this. The applicant just pointed out that it is shown and it's hidden behind the parapet. And I guess that's why I didn't see it. So I'm going to scratch number three because they are providing the roof mechanical. At the next submittal, this is number 4. At the next submittal, applicant to please show the layout of the brick wall, including the thickness shown to scale, And also please show the pillar locations. This can make a difference for the landscape layout. But with that, staff does recommend preliminary approval.
Thanks, David. Ken or Andrew, I assume you have nothing to respond to?
No,
Or
we're
do you have
good.
anything you need? Okay, great.
We're good.
Now, board discussion and a motion.
This is Dino's. I'm pleased with the editing. It's, you know, as a gas station, I think it's just very simply stated. It's clean. It's very appropriate for the site. I have no issues. And I'll defer to others, but prepared to make a motion.
Well,
I think my only comment was, sorry, Jeff, I didn't mean to interrupt.
Sure.
And I may have missed it in the plans or the submittal, but just to have all of the equipment cut sheets going to David at final review or the next review, just because sometimes that equipment can vary in aesthetics that I've seen throughout town. What's shown is great. I mean, I think it's fine. It's just if it's differs from what's shown in the renderings.
Good point. And I'd like to also say that with the equipment, I know that in other parts, other projects, we've had some challenges with noise from the vacuums. I know that's been a challenge before. Maybe it's a little bit different on this given site. And I'm not, unless I'm missing it, is there photometrics or any lighting cut sheets on the lighting? I don't see it in the package here.
I
Just
don't think,
Ken or Andrew, could you answer that?
yeah, I don't think we have photometrics at this point. We'd be glad to provide them with final.
right. Well, with a gas station, it's particularly important that light is coordinated and the lights that are on the gas canopy are designed and thoughtful. And same thing with the convenient or with the C-store. It's all those things need to be cohesive. So I would certainly suggest that the motion include all exterior lighting and a lighting plan on the canopy.
Okay. Perfect sense.
I don't have anything from a landscape with Sandy. I don't really have anything from a landscape point of view. Other than the renderings look like they show a rock mulch, and the landscape plans don't specify. And so I guess my only comment is that we not use rock for mulch, but either preferably pine straw, but you know, in areas of smaller stuff, you use hardwood mulch in those areas.
Any other comments or motion?
This is Michelle Smith. I am happy to be back with the board this evening. Great to see you all. I apologize, I missed the previous applications for this project. I think that the project looks great. The only comment I would have is I question the height of the towers for the car wash. If you look at the height of the roof and the height of the adjacent parapet, it is nearly equal to the height of the main building from the ground to the parapet. So I just think it is looking a little top heavy, but that's the only suggestion I would have for the applicant, is to study that proportional relationship. Otherwise, the architecture is very consistent, and I think that the details present themselves nicely, and I think that it will be a nice project.
Thanks, Michelle. Anyone else or a motion?
I'd be delighted. This is Dino's to move for preliminary approval with staff comments 1, 2, and 4. And board comments, provide photometrics of all exterior lighting at final. Board comment 2 is to use hardwood mulch in lieu of rock mulch. Did I say that right, Andy?
I would just say not to use the rock mulch.
Okay. Do not use rock mulch. And comment number 3 is to restudy proportional relationship of tower at car wash.
May I add to about providing exterior lighting product information?
Excellent.
What was that again, Jeff? Sorry.
Provide exterior lighting information.
Okay. So we have a motion for preliminary approval with staff comments 1, 2, and 4, along with board comments. 1, provide a photometric plan of all exterior lighting at final review and also provide exterior lighting information. 2, do not use rock mulch. 3, restudy the proportional relationship of the car wash.
Erica, would you
Sure.
like to, do you want to add the comment you made about the cut sheets for the other mechanical?
Yes, is that okay, Dinos?
Absolutely.
Then I'll amend it for the board motion to include a number 4 to provide cut sheets of all exterior mechanical vacuum equipment and appurtenances.
This is Andy. I'd second the motion.
So we have a motion and a second. I'll now call roll. Jeff,
Aye in favor. Thank you.
Aaron,
Yes, in favor.
Michelle,
Yes, in favor.
and then myself, yes, in favor. Thank you all very much.
Thank you. Thanks, Erica.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We'll now be moving on to item number 2, 2280 Henry Tekkenberg Drive, requesting preliminary approval for the construction of a 1-story dialysis clinic.
Again, I just have a few slides for the context, showing the location of the site. This is 2280 Henry Tekkenberg. This is going to be a 1-story dialysis center. This is a closer view of the location. And then looking into the site. And with that, I'll turn it over to Jack.
I'm here. Can y'all hear me?
We
Yes.
can, thank you.
Okay. I guess I'd like to start with the DRB comment responses. The first was study the continuity of the 3 masses of the building. And so since the last meeting, we've done some adjustments to the finishes where they lie on the building, the 3 different masses. And we have further developed the color schemes and the samples, as you can see in the package, picked out the brick and paint and everything. Item 2, incorporate gutters and downspouts, which we've done. Particularly in the front of the building, we've put gutters where each of the double columns happen to be, and sort of threaded them through the columns to kind of make them disappear behind them, but also so they properly attach to the building. They're a little more stable that way, rather than just having them float in front of the columns. Study the support of the column bases. We beefed those up a bit per recommendations from the board. Present a color palette, which we have provided. Study the overhangs. That was one of the comments that the board requested. We try to make the overhangs as narrow as possible or as thin as possible, which, consulting with structural, we've gotten them as thin as we can get. Make all the fenestration deep set into the walls. We've got the windows set in as deeply as we could. Showed the location of the monument sign. We show this on the site plan, and corresponding site documentation. I show the details, showing the materials and how the sign will be constructed. Landscape needs a concept to accompany the building design. I'll leave that with the landscape architect to explain their process. And then finally continue to study moving the building further south away from the street. We moved the building an additional 8 feet, and this was as far back as we could do it due to the location of the existing grand trees. And that's all.
Thanks, Jack. And before we jump into kind of the business aspect, I just want to express on behalf of myself and the board our deepest condolences for Mr. Dover. I'm so sorry to hear about his passing.
Thank you.
So with that, do we have any board questions?
This is Michelle Smith. I may be missing it in the drawings, but what is the material of the underside of the exterior soffit?
It is going to be hardy trim beadboard, painted white.
Okay, thank you.
It should call it out in the A6.0 sections.
Any other questions? So with none, and we have no public comments, David, staff recommendations, please.
Sure. Thank you, Erica. This is David Meeks. Staff comment number 1, the previous motion had asked for more native plants to be used, and the applicant has removed a few of the ornamental plants such as Japanese barberry and wax myrtle. The columns and the porte-cochere bases were thickened in size for a more appropriate size for supporting what's above. Downspouts are now incorporated into the massing of the building. Details are provided for the overhangs. The monument sign is now shown as the board asked, and the landscape plan has been strengthened at the building entry and the entry drive. Staff comment number 2, signage will need to be submitted separately for DRB review at the end of the DRB review process. Regarding the photometric plan, there are some numbers in foot candle levels near the building entry, which are higher than 5-foot candles. This is above what DRB typically allows, but seeing as this is a medical drop-off area and the light levels do not spill out off the site, staff is okay with these levels. Number 4, staff approves of the lighting style specified for the site in the parking lot. And staff recommends that the top angle, oh gosh, I thought I provided a example here. Staff recommends that the top angle of the monument sign be revised to match the angle of the building roof that is closest to the monument. So in this elevation here, I was just saying that it'd be good if the angle of this sign were to match the angle of the roof here, just a slight revision. But with that, staff does recommend preliminary approval.
Thanks, David. Jack, I assume you have nothing to clarify or respond to in David's comments?
No, thank you.
Okay. Now we are in board discussion and a motion.
This is Andy from the landscape. I mean, I think it has evolved quite well. I guess the only comments I really have, and I don't really see them as being anything major, is that they're showing some Spanish bayonet plant, the yuccas, and specifically up there by the front entrance. I guess I'd ask those to either be substituted or moved. the plan continues to reference an L201 and an L202 that we haven't seen. It seems to have some details that are missing. And I'd just like to have those, make sure those are in the final package. Let's see.
Hey, Andy, I'm sorry.
Yes,
Can you repeat the plants again? Yucca and just the Spanish.
well, Yucca is Spanish bayonet plant.
Oh, I'm sorry,
It's,
Spanish bayonet. Okay.
yeah. And then the other one is the Japanese Terstromia. I'd just like to see a substitute for that. I was just kind of the planting plan specifically around the pond indicates a sheet that has not ever been part of the set. And I don't know if that's just a mistaken number because there is a separate sheet, but it references an L201. I just want that in the set or that note corrected. And then looking at the east elevation, there is a pretty large disconnect on the very bottom side. I know that area is landscaped, but when that property next door develops, I think that's going to expose all that disconnect across that corner. So I'd like them to study screening that out with either a fence or somehow to buffer that for the future, or to paint those, or just somehow to lessen the effect of those that equipment. I guess that's all that I really have. Yeah, I just want to say I do think the landscape plan has evolved quite well.
And just to add on to something Andy said for the panels, that is something that we require and will look for. A final inspection is to paint the electric panels the same color as the wall that they're located.
Any other comments or motion?
May I ask if what is the color of the standing seam metal roof? Will it be the gray that's shown?
Yes, it is. I believe the standard galvalume,
Okay.
gray, silver type of standing seam.
Okay. And I just wanted to reiterate what Andy said too on the east elevation, the screening for all of the electrical is a great catch. I don't have anything else. I think it's gonna be a
I'd like to,
handsome
can I make a motion for preliminary approval with,
Sure.
with staff comment? Something about revising the sign angle. I'm not sure what number that was.
5.
5, okay. Or study that revision. And the board comments for switching out a few plant species of note was the Spanish bayonet, the Japanese.
I got it. I wrote them down. I knew it was coming.
Jeff, can you spell that?
Well, I'll email it to you. Provide landscape plans 101 and 102. And board comment number 3, screen the electrical service entry or paint it as the same color of the wall.
Jeff, just it's 201 and 202.
Oh, excuse me, L201 and L202.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
May I ask if, for the screening, was that screen and paint the same color? Or was it?
You know, we've always found that physical screening is much more successful than painting.
I
And as a
agree.
preference, I would recommend, and I'd love to hear more opinions from the board upon physical screening rather than paint, especially one that's given so close to the property line.
Yeah. And I
My-
would agree with the screening aspect personally.
And I do too. I just wanted to give the second option if there's, you know, if there's something that we don't know about in these plans, that, you know, that's kind of the last resort, is to paint them.
Mhm.
Okay, got it. Any other conditions, Jeff?
No, I believe that captures it.
Okay, so we have a motion for preliminary approval with staff comment number 5 and board comments 1 to find a substitution for the yucca and the Japanese confirmia. I think I got that right, Andy.
Yes.
2, to clean up the landscape plan sheet references or to include the reference sheets in the next submittal. 3, screen the electrical service entry or at a very minimum, paint it the same color of the wall. Is there a second?
Second,
Is that Michelle?
yes.
May I ask for clarification? Was, again, I hate to say this, is the motion to paint or provide screening, or is the motion to provide screening?
The motion
The
is to
motion-
provide the screening, but at a minimum to paint the same color as the wall, as I understand it. Like Andy said, if there's something preventing the screening or something that we're unaware of, then I think that would be the alternative.
May we, is it, would,
I would rather say physically screen the electrical panel and not give the minimum option.
Jeff, you're making the motion, so
Mhm.
I will amend it. So board comment number 3 would be to physically screen the electrical service entry, period.
Correct.
Could I ask that you add to provide a fence detail as well?
Yes.
I'm going
Right.
to reread the motion just to make sure we're all clear. So we have a motion for preliminary approval with staff comment number 5, board comments 1, find a substitution for the yucca and the Japanese confirmia. 2, clean up the landscape plan sheet references or include the reference sheets listed. 3, physically screen the electrical service entry. 4, provide fence details. Is there a second? Michelle, was that you?
Yes, yes, I
Okay.
second the motion.
Thank you. I will now call roll. Dinos,
yay.
Aaron,
Yes, in favor.
Andy,
Yes, in favor.
and then I am also yes in favor. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next on the agenda is item number 3, 1800 Produce Lane, requesting conceptual approval for the construction of a 1-story multi-tenant commercial building.
Thank you. Give me 1 second here. I'm just letting some people in. Okay. So 1800 Produce Lane. Here's the location of the project on Maybank Highway at Produce Lane. Here's a closer view. And then looking into the site. And with that, I'll turn it over to Lossie.
Yeah, and hey, this is Kyle Taylor. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Perfect. Well, I'll go ahead and kick it off. This is Kyle Taylor with Hoyt & Barini. We're the civil engineer and landscape architect on the project. We've got Lossie with the architect on the call as well. George Rivas, the owner, may be on the call. More to tune in. Christopher Morgan, I spoke with him earlier today. He may be on the call as well, just to sort of communicate any additional items concerning the comprehensive plan for Johns Island that I'll just touch on. And Lee Batchelder may be on the phone call as well. We had spoken maybe last week as well, representing some city staff. So I'll try and be brief. This is our, I don't know what number, I think number 3 here. So I think everyone's kind of understands kind of what we're trying to accomplish and where we're going with our plan. David, would you mind turning to the letter produced with a few summary notes from the comprehensive plan?
Oh, you mean your response letter?
I wouldn't call it a response letter so much, just sort of a narrative on the comprehensive plan.
Should be page 8, I think.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay.
Yeah, I'll just sort of start large and then kind of work our way in here. Just a few bullet points here, just for conversation purposes. You know, the site is located at the first of 3 nodes for gathering places for the Johns Island comprehensive plan. So that sort of details a little bit of a different structure and aesthetic than a lot of other areas of Johns Island. I think we're all kind of on the same page, but thought I'd just go through 1 or 2 points of the plan, and this was submitted, so hopefully maybe everyone's kind of seen it and gleaned through it. David, maybe just turn to page 3 or 4 of this quick. Yeah, maybe one more. Yeah, so as far as our building placement, that's kind of been the main point of just trying to figure out how to best fit the building and the site for the parcel that we're working with. So just kind of show that, you know, we are intending to kind of be consistent with the comprehensive plan and hopefully show that we're not totally crazy with other areas of Johns Island. The comprehensive plan does suggest and promote buildings being at or close to the right of way. Not to say that the plan is feasible to necessarily have canopies within the right of way, which we're no longer proposing. DOT kind of gave us a little bit of pushback on the feasibility of having canopies in the right of way. But we did want to point out these figures from the comprehensive plan, the settlement plan for Johns Island, and our intent to be consistent. Dave, would you mind just turning up a few pages back to sheet C 4.0? Matter of fact, go one more. Sheet C 4.1. 4.1. Yeah. So the aerial imagery, as David showed, is obviously a little bit outdated. There's a new subdivision here. So this is shown for reference. I don't know that we necessarily provided this in our last couple of submittals. So this sort of helps show the walkability of the development that we're proposing as part of this 33 lot subdivision. And again, we're near the intersection of River Road and Maybank Highway. David, maybe go back then to C 4.0.
Which one?
Yeah, perfect. And I don't know if there's a way for me to take hold of the control, but if not, I'll keep going.
No, you can just let me know.
Okay.
I'm glad to do it.
Yes. So a few changes just to highlight here from conversations on our last meeting. Really, I think the main sort of broad comment from the board was better addressing the public realm. So what we've done in this modification here is we've gone to a more of a dedicated one-way circulation on site, and that's kind of allowed us to grab a few more feet of that frontage. So we've shifted the building further away from the property line. I think, as you can see, maybe 8 to 10 feet further from the property line. So that's shown along the frontage. We've widened that sidewalk in response to some general feedback from David as well as Lee.
I thought you had a.
I don't know if we got a sticky keyboard, but in any case, so the distance from the edge of pavement to the building is now 35 to 40 feet. Oh, okay, perfect. You were going to the architecture. So, and of course, the dimensions here are going to be a little bit different than the dimensions shown on our site plan, just based on where you throw your dimension. But we are proposing some decent separation from the edge of pavement. We are proposing a new turn lane dedicated to the other side, the far side of the road, and that'll be designed and permitted through coordination with SCDOT. A few other minor items. You know, we did get rid of one parking space as a result of our circulation modification. Landscaping is hopefully you can see a little bit beefed up along the frontage in response to, I believe it was Jeff that, kind of requested more of a garden look along the frontage. So we've made some efforts to include some additional ground covers that we feel like is consistent with the building color palette, kind of a neutral color palette there along the frontage. And we've got the blow up area as well that may be easier to see. So the frontage has kind of a mixture of sod against the sidewalk with some ground covers, some shrubs, as well as benches, the oyster shell tabby concrete, and the brick borders for those really sort of wider mouth sidewalk entryways that we feel like will look really good. So hopefully I didn't talk too quickly. That's kind of the rundown, I think, of the site changes. Maybe one other thing I'll note is the additional fencing that we are proposing, the pier and slat fencing by Unit D, which is the same type of fencing we're proposing near Unit A. Yes, Unit D. So we've got some additional screening there as well. That we will have wetlands that will remain for screening purposes from the right of way, but we are proposing some additional pier and slat fencing along there as well. So at risk of being too long-winded, I'm happy to answer any questions from the site and landscape perspective, but I think I'll turn it to Lassie to kind of bring us home with his nice rendering.
So good evening, guys. David, if you don't mind, let's jump to page 15 in the presentation. And we've had an opportunity to meet with Lee Batchelder and Christopher Morgan, and then David, you've been such a help to us as well. And we've had a chance to kind of dig in a little bit further into this Johns Island Community Plan. And so I think I'd like to just kind of show some of the pages in the plan just to kind of key everybody in to where exactly we fall into this sort of four corners scheme, or this sort of town section. So I think it would be page 15, David. I'm not sure if we can go back just one or two slides.
Yeah, Lassie, I'll have to say that you guys got me the updated set with the page numbers, and it looks like I failed to get it in there. I sent it to the board, but I didn't get it in here.
Oh, no worries at all. So if we could just back up a few more sheets, I'll just go to one page of this town section and kind of keep it brief, but we can keep going backwards a little bit there. Let's see, it should be one or two more back. Yeah, right there. So this, I'm sorry, one more forward.
Oh.
So this portion of the community plan gets into these town sections, and
I'm sorry.
Sorry, David, if we could advance forward to where we had, yeah, we had page 17 on RM, but I think just one more forward would do it.
Other way.
That's it right there. Yeah, so we felt like this portion of the study was really helpful to kind of go through and kind of just evaluate what this Four Corners plan is, and these sort of town sections. And I'm sure the board is very familiar with it, but kind of trying to understand a little bit better with Lee and with Christopher was helpful. And this portion of the plan calls for density. It calls for buildings to front close to the right of way, and then looking at the pedestrian shed and making sure everything's in a 5 to 10 minute walking area for pedestrians, mixed use, varying roof lines, pedestrian friendly spaces for bikes and plazas and that type of thing. So David, if we could advance one more slide forward, please. All right, and then one more, please. Okay, so this is an important slide here where you can see sort of the top portion we've highlighted with that yellow block kind of outlined with red, where we've got this town section. And so the town sections are considered to be the center of the gathering spaces for the gathering. And so this is where the density occurs. And then on the lower right-hand side, you can see where we've got the typical section through these areas. And, you know, it shows these, it shows the lane, auto lanes, it shows bike paths, it shows sidewalk spaces. And so that diagram there is going to come up a little bit later on in the presentation, and we just wanted the board to see that we have a comparative study there to make sure we're consistent with that, while also trying to take into account the board's comments. So based on what we see here, generally from the edge of pavement to the face of building or porch or canopy is roughly about 25 feet. So when you get to our plans, you'll see we've actually moved the building back based on some feedback from the board, and we're anywhere between 32 and 38 feet now to try to create this space for this sort of pedestrian realm to occur. David, if we could go ahead and advance, if you would, go ahead and let's go to the first color rendering. Guys, so I won't spend much time on the building plan itself. The building square footage has not changed. That right there, what you see is the previous proposed design where the building was approximately 29 feet off the face of curb at the middle section or middle portions tenant B and C. And then if we go to the next slide. Yep. So this next slide is just a comparative slide. It kind of shows you now. Oh, yeah. Kind of shows you now that we've made some more space for this kind of pedestrian realm to occur along Maybank. We've added bike racks. We've got some seating areas. One of the past board comments was trying to achieve some verticality, potentially through some palm trees. So we've included that. And we've actually taken some of the language from the side covered courtyard area and applied it up front. So we've got the scored tabby sidewalks and trimming everything out with brick and sort of applying that same language across the front of the building. And then we actually recessed the center two tenants to just provide a little bit further articulation across the front of the building. And other than that, the architecture really hasn't changed other than just tweaking some of the colors, which you'll see at the end of the presentation when we get to the materials palette sheet. Next slide, please. So Kyle went over this site information already, but I think it kind of helps us sort of see things in this 3D perspective. So you can see we actually have loosened up the site. We've got some, we've integrated some landscape between the sidewalk in the rear and the retail spaces, roughly 3 feet of landscape there. We have continued some of the language from the covered courtyard over to tenant D, which is more to the west. We've picked up some additional landscape plantings and islands in the parking lot. We're actually down one parking space, but we still have the parking that's needed for the intended use. And David, if you could skip ahead, I know we're short on time. I'd like to see if we can get to, I have it as slide 29, but maybe just a little bit further down the line, please. Let's see. Yeah, and let's see, one or two more. Oh, that's perfect right there. So that shows you the previous and proposed for this pedestrian area. And then if we skip to the next slide. Yep. And so we've taken sort of a simple approach to how to just define these spaces. And, you know, one of the things that was requested was to have some consideration for multiple uses along the sidewalk. We've increased the sidewalk width to 8 feet and then just kind of created these sort of secondary spaces, and the doors that you see there are functional. They do lead into the retail spaces if one chose to enter that way, and you can see the integrated bike racks. And so back on the landscape slide at L1.0, I think it is, you'll see a more detailed plan, nice plan that Kyle put together. But let's go ahead and proceed forward to the next slide, please.
Oh, okay, sorry.
And I'll wrap this thing up for comments. Yeah. Yeah, there you go. And now you can see how we've integrated the palms here along Maybank. Next slide, please. Yeah, next slide, please. One of the subtle adjustments that we've made as we move forward through the slides is we ended up realizing we need to kind of lower the canopies over the doors a little bit more, just functionally to keep the rain out, but also to make a little bit more space for retail signage and lighting. And you'll probably find that in the next slide. Yeah, and this is tenant D, where we've added that tabby wall and sort of slat wall on the left-hand side in your screen, and kind of created that sort of secondary pedestrian space. And then you can see some of the newly proposed lighting for the signage, and we have a cut sheet in the back which covers that. And then let's go one more slide, please. All right, next slide. And then one more, please. Okay, so I thought this was ultimately where we wanted to land on, kind of showing this comparative diagram. If we look at the center line of road, the Johns Island report shows roughly 42 feet from center line to face of building or structure. And we've got roughly 52 to 57 feet. So sort of in that range, and also just trying to take into account comments received by the board. And then also, I think sort of grading transition from Maybank was discussed. Currently, Maybank's at about a 22 elevation. And in working with Kyle on the civil side, it looks like we're going to be able to get our building side at about 24. So it's going to be about a 2-foot transition over that 38 feet or so from the edge of Maybank. And we kind of depicted that sort of in a simple diagrammatic site section here. And on the other side from us is St. Stephen's Church. And obviously it sits back from Maybank, so you only see the parking lot there. And then this will be my, if we can go advance one slide, I'll cover the materials palette, and then we can open it up for discussion. So the materials palette has just been modified slightly to adjust the storefront window frames to a darker color. Previously, they were sort of a soft gray, and we felt like everything felt a little too washed out. And so with the darker frames, kind of working with the accent goose lights over the signage, we felt like that was a little bit stronger contrast, which we liked. And then the center 2 tenants, we looked at using a little bit more of a bold color there versus that kind of lighter taupe we had before. So we have this sort of raindrop color is what it's called, just to kind of further break up the massing and kind of punctuate that area at the pedestrian realm. Remaining in the set is just the elevations that we can go to if we need to, but at this time we'll open it up to any board comments or questions.
Thank you. I'll start off with a few questions. The plans show the right-of-way varying in this section of Maybank, but again, it may be, I think what you're saying is that there is, can you give us some approximate dimensions of the right-of-way?
Yeah, it's about 67 feet.
Okay, so based on that 67-foot section in the comp plan, no additional right-of-way would be required to, or would need to be condemned or acquired for that 67 feet right-of-way? And then Kyle, what were you mentioning about a turn lane?
Yeah, so the plan that we're looking at right here shows the new left-hand turn into produce lane that's not there today. So Erica, we'd be tying into the pavement to the east, kind of to the plan north there that is under construction right now for that intersection. And then we'd kind of just be continuing that edge of pavement line a little bit further, you know, than the intersection plans call for to provide our new left-hand turn lane. But we would not be anticipating any condemnation.
Okay. In the 67-foot section, there is a 12-foot sidewalk shown, and y'all are proposing 8. What is the reason for that?
Yeah, so 8 came from our conversations with staff, with David and with Lee. 8 seemed appropriate. The sort of snippet from the settlement plan, you know, shows curb and gutter and, you know, a 12-foot sidewalk, kind of like a true downtown look. And, you know, I guess I wouldn't say that we're absolutely not going to do that, but we don't necessarily see that exactly being appropriate or even able to be permitted with the DOT. So as it stands, what we'd like to do is this 8-foot kind of multi-use path adjacent to the right-of-way.
Okay. And then my last question was, if Maybank's around a 22-foot elevation, I guess you said there was a 2-foot difference from existing grade over 38 feet to finished floor. That equates to over a 5% slope. So can you walk me through how you're achieving the difference in elevation?
Yeah. Yeah, well, certainly the 8-foot path kind of hurts us a little bit more than a 5-foot path would, but we would anticipate trying to make up that grade in that immediate shoulder area. Certainly if curbing, was required, that gives us 6 inches there. But we'd anticipate making that up with, say a 10% grade, for 15 feet or whatnot, and then making the rest up, with 5% max for ADA compliance as you go into those entryways.
You're in I mean, at least I read the plans that you're in a flood zone X. Is there any reason you can't lower your finished floor?
Yeah, the top of the pond is 23.5, more or less. So we're trying to at least have a little bit of freeboard even above, the top of the pond elevation. The top of the pond actually has a little bit of freeboard, presumably from the 100-year, but that's kind of the reasoning for, the 24 plus or minus for that FFE.
Okay. That's all my questions.
I have a question, and it's kind of the site plan and where this 8-foot, I'm kind of going through this on a different project, where this 8-foot or 12-foot or whatever width walkway we want to provide, how does it terminate at the adjacent property? And does it make sense to the adjacent property?
Yeah, Jeff, that's a great question. That's one of those things, these sidewalks are provided to be in compliance with the zoning ordinance and even in this case, the additional, comprehensive plan, but, adjacent to us, there is no sidewalk connection. So the intent would be to terminate it, at or near where our property ends and then tie back into, existing grade or the adjacent driveway, kind of whichever comes first, it makes the most sense.
Where the sidewalk ends at the property line.
I'm sorry?
That children's poem book where the sidewalk ends.
Oh.
It ends at the property line.
Joel Silverstein, come on, guys.
Thank you.
I've got a question about a monument sign. I was wondering if you all are going to do a monument sign, or is the signage on the front of the building going to be sufficient?
Yeah, David, right now we're actually hoping to do 2 monument signs, being that it's at a corner adjacent to 2 roadways. That it is called out on the site plan sheet. So we're hoping to do one, near unit A. That's probably target location, number 1. And yeah, maybe one more. Yeah. And then hopefully number 2, if the owners decide to move forward with attempting to do number 2, whether or not it would require a BZA approval or not, that'd be, I guess that's technically called number 1 on the site plan, but that'd be the other location.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, I missed those.
Lassie, this is Dino. So just wanted to follow up with one question on Jeff's comment, which we were picking up the same thing. The termination of the sidewalk, is there any reason why it couldn't terminate at the last entry point on the west side?
Yeah, that's a great point. I think it would be a much better design if we didn't just lop it off at the property line. So that's something we should probably consider. Can we still meet the ordinance by doing that? Requirements of the ordinance?
Yeah, that was my question. Really.
Okay.
Yeah, so certainly we can make that request, when we go to TRC next. That's like you said, that's kind of an ordinance item.
The other question is this, and I don't know if you can really answer it, but I will bring it up. I do like the way architecturally and from the site standpoint, it's all very nicely vernacularly evolving. if you travel down Savannah Highway or even in Mount Pleasant, when the two accesses to retail space is provided on each side of a tenant space, there seems to be a tendency at some points that when a tenant is engaged or secured, that one of the entry points, and usually it's the one on the highway, is almost blocked off, or a wall is placed in there, or signage is put on the door, but there's real no door. How are you going to, or what are your thoughts regarding maintaining the activation of the two entries? Because it really is an important component, I'm assuming, based upon the master plan.
I think that's a good point. We've done many buildings that have that sort of, two faces, and we end up having to have sort of a central core for toilets and other utilities. And we really have to work hard, like you said, not to just make that a back stock room. So I think that's going to be some careful kind of management of the tenants that come in there. We've had a few cases where we've had restaurants come in and, they needed the space, and we just said, hey, let's see into the kitchen. We want to see that activity. We want to see that kind of, we felt like that kind of contributed back rather than seeing the stock room. So we need to keep our eye on that.
Yeah, well, I guess from a design standpoint is where I'm going with this. How do we, as opposed to becoming facadal, how is this the response? I mean, you can look down Maybank Highway, even closer to Folly Road, where there are accesses into office retail spaces that are truthfully purely blank walls. How is there anything within the lease agreements that mandates the activation of both these entries?
So I wish I could answer that. I don't know. We could ask Mr. Rivas if that's something that could be incorporated. I wouldn't want to answer that for him, but I think it would be a great idea to maintain that access.
Okay. I'm not trying to put you on the spot. I know, and I know
No.
that probably everybody understands and has seen examples of this before, and what it's just. Whereas philosophically, it's a wonderful idea if we can activate both sides. Realistically, I have no idea what percentage of success that they have on activating two sides, particularly as you were saying, when you need storage and or you need service entry and or you need a kitchen, what happens? But the problem, of course, falls back to the architect when everybody is going, well, why the hell they put a door there when it just goes into a storage room and it means very little. So anyway, okay.
One of the things that's been kind of neat to see in evolution in Mount Pleasant, particularly, are those small double-sided retail spaces. And in the age of COVID, when people are hungry for outdoor dining spaces, the smallest space has turned into a nice public space. And I think by virtue of kind of pushing this building a little bit more interior, you could capture some of that space that now I think you've got about 10 feet between the building and the sidewalk. You could capture that back for that kind of space.
Yeah, as long as it's activated, I think that's the key issue, is making sure that it's a very otherwise it just defeats the purpose of the city's plan. But and I don't disagree, Jeff.
Any other questions?
This is Michelle. I have a brief question for the applicant. It looks like Unit A may potentially be identified as a restaurant space, and you may have said that. I'm just going along the located identification of the outdoor dining space. So, and I'm seeing that the eaved area of Unit A is a higher ceiling space, lossy. So do you anticipate if there is a commercial kitchen as part of this restaurant for the makeup air and the exhaust to be occurring in the membrane roofed portion? Is that how you're thinking that could be treated? Or And if so, that, you know,
Yeah.
that equipment may need screening.
Right. Michelle, that's something that we do need to put some thought into. And right now, we've sort of generally shown enough space there for mechanical units, but that's a really good point that, you know, we expect that hopefully will be a restaurant. And we're going to have to look at ventilation and, like you said, makeup air, everything. So we probably should be showing one more bit of mechanical up there with some screening that's sort of set back for tenant A, and kind of plan that out a little bit better.
And David, how is
Because
that? How is that usually handled too? If it is later a tenant upfit, that screening should, I guess, be technically part of that package, or how has that been handled in the past?
Quite often we get people who will discover they have exposed mechanical, and they do check in with us and ask what's required. We are always saying that we reserve the right to require additional screening if we find that mechanical is visible from the street.
Okay.
So we do keep a close eye on that.
Okay, great. Thank you.
And just, Michelle, to add to that, like, you know, the portion of tenant A that also fronts produce lane and kind of spills out to that outdoor dining area, we've got that designed to truly be sort of a 1.5-story scale space in there. And you can see the sort of the transom lights above. So we should consider how that mechanical would happen between that taller gable roof line and the next parapet over on tenant B.
Mm-hmm.
May I ask Christopher a question, Madam Chair?
Of course.
I don't want him to go to sleep over there. I just wanted to ask him a quick question. How are you, my friend?
I'm alert, Dinos.
I know you are. I know you are. I know it is the development of the two facades a component of the master plan?
Well, the idea for these town centers along Maybank is that they would have buildings up towards the street.
Right.
So, you know, the practical reality of a lot of development today is that you do have parking that wants to be near the entrance to the stores. So that's why the parking lots end up kind of being to the rear. And I think as much attention as can be paid to, you know, trying to keep those street front access points, you know, open and, you know, visible inside, things like that, that y'all have been talking about is good. But I think it still is in keeping with the principles of that plan to have the building up like this on the street.
Right. And that, I mean, and I like the way that the building is evolving. I guess my question is this: are there any aspects of the plan that mandates that that both entries on the front and the back of the tenant space remain active?
There's nothing in the plan that says that. No.
You know, if you look at the space in front of St. Andrew's Shopping Center, for instance, there is a big orange wall there that in one of the tenant spaces, for instance, that's obviously a storeroom. Is I guess the aspect is what teeth does the city have? It's a question of, from a planning standpoint of.
I think some of that gets to enforcement. Like if they're putting coverings on the actual glazing of the window, we can enforce that. If they're putting something, say, a foot or two behind the back of the window glass, you know, I don't know that we can really have control over that from like a design review standpoint. It's more an internal thing, and our codes don't really address that. BAR has the same issues downtown, as you know. You know, I've got the CVS at George and St. Philip that, you know, was supposed to have more display space, and they ended up kind of putting CVS signs right up against those windows. It's something that we see in all parts of the city where you have different types of retailers that don't want to have as much, you know, glazing in their storefronts as others might. You know, the restaurants always work great, you know, the offices work great, but sometimes the retailers are a little bit tougher.
Well, thank you. Your insight's always extremely helpful. Thank you, my friend.
Well, if I were the applicant, I think I'd be encouraged that we're talking to this level of detail at this point. I wonder, thinking if parcel A is going to be a restaurant, then maybe, I think this building addresses the street quite nicely.
Mhm.
I appreciate the space coming off of it. But I wonder, it's got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 entry points right now. Maybe that's just a touch too much. And especially if pad A or parcel A is going to be the a restaurant, with likely that second entry on this slide will be a kitchen space. Maybe we don't need to connect to that space. So it's kind of a choose where you want it. And maybe that's not the ideal spot.
We are, sorry to interrupt, Jeff, we're still in board questions. Or does anyone have any additional questions?
Thank you for keeping me on track.
And me too.
Any other questions? So with that, we do not have any public comments. So David, if you could please give staff recommendations.
Sure, thank you. So staff does support this project and thinks it'll be an attractive addition to Maybank Highway, in the beginning of one of the 3 envisioned Johns Island town centers along Maybank Highway. The applicant has made improvements with the building facade articulation and by giving the front a little more room for plantings, seating areas, and giving back to the public realm. A wider front sidewalk at 8 feet has been provided, and bike racks have also been provided. On the parking lot side of the building, some plantings were added between the building and the sidewalk, which is also an improvement. Number 2, staff supports the building location in the landscape buffer. Number 3, staff supports the change to the color raindrop for the center portion of the building. Number 4, staff supports the gooseneck lighting specified on the building. Staff likes the style of the screen fence being used. Number 6, regarding the 2 parking spots closest to produce lane. Let me get to that slide. Yeah, these 2 right here. Cars parked here will be very visible. And staff requests that the applicant add another layer of landscape screening with some additional height. Like around this side. The dwarf Yupon hollies and inkberry shrubs specified at this location will not get tall enough to screen the cars, as they will be very visible from Maybank Highway and Produce Lane. Number 7, for the added low planters between the cars and the parking lot, I'm referring to these in here. Staff recommends keeping these low so the car bumpers don't hit them and crack them. And instead, they act as wheel stops if they were lowered a little bit. The planters may have to become just a little bit wider so the car bumpers don't hit the trees. But staff does recommend conceptual approval.
Thanks, David. Lossie, did y'all have any questions or clarifications on David's staff comments?
No, thank you. I think we're good.
Okay. Now we are in board discussion and motion time.
David, do you mind flipping to the landscape plan? I just wanted to look at things on there real quick.
Tell me if you need me to zoom in or anything.
Yeah. Yeah, can you zoom in on the area along Maybank? See that a little more closely.
There's a detail shot on the top of that page,
Mm-hmm.
but I'm not sure. I don't know if it shows all the planting.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Well, here on this depiction, it doesn't show that entry. It would be the kitchen. So the landscape design's already caught up to that comment.
I can slide it back down to the other one if that's better.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, slide it down. I just wanted to see the overall landscape plan up close a little bit. And the area that you were talking about a minute ago. Okay.
Oh, up here.
Yeah. Thanks. Yeah, generally, I think it's come a long way in the right direction. And looking at this, Jeff, and this view too, it's missing that entrance. It's not just at the top. So I guess it's, you know.
We just
maybe-
anticipated the comment.
I know.
Is the rendering shows the entrance.
It does.
It
Yeah.
does. It
Sheet
does.
24. So the entrance is not intended at that point, I'm assuming.
I think if we're honest, that's a coordination thing that we're going to have to iron out moving forward. But we're in agreement. It probably works better without having the two pads there. So
Okay.
landscape's ahead of me there.
Prior to connecting onto this meeting, I was driving down Maybank here and studied this area very closely. And it's interesting. I think that your presentation didn't quite accurately depict the context, the immediate context. And a lot of this area, you think of Maybank Highway and you think of it being more rural than whatever. I won't say urban because it's not urban. This particular stretch, probably here and maybe a little bit further south to, or west, I guess, to the intersection, has a pretty big variety of buildings that are close to the street. And none of them are as attractively landscaped as this one. So I think this is going to be a good example kind of moving forward. There's a cool little car repair shop down the street that's all paving from the road to the building. And then there's some little store next to it with the same condition. So I think kind of given the context, this sighting feels about right to me. And I think the texture and the layering of the landscape off of the sidewalk width, and is going to feel quite nice. And I hope serves as a good example for other folks who will be doing the same sort of development or under the same standards. I think there's been a dramatic improvement, and particularly given this context where it sits on the site and the proximity to the corner and what's happening around it. I feel like this design is definitely on the right track.
I agree. And I know that in past versions, I've been critical of how it addresses the street and doesn't engage with the public realm and all. And I think this does a much better job of approaching that than anything we've seen in the past. So I'm glad that y'all evolved it in this way, because I think it's much improved just from the way that it interacts with Maybank Highway than the previous submittals. So thank you.
This is Andy, and I'd like to echo the thoughts that my fellow board members have. I don't think we've ever had really a problem with moving the building forward. I think that just how it was executed, I think, has always been our major sticking point. And I think how you've done this is really well done. I guess that I would just say that at the next level, I think I would continue to revise and edit. I guess just the flow and pattern of the landscaping up here. It does seem to be some very starts and stops in there. And maybe some of the plants could be more architectural than the Dwarfia pond. But I think that it's a really good concept and how it's starting to evolve. And just make sure that like where you have bike racks and those sorts of things, that they have the room to get off of the sidewalk in front of it. When a bicycle's parked there, that it's not going to take up some room out into the sidewalk. You really can't see it on the landscape plan, but I kind of started seeing it in some of the renderings where you have the bike rack and the back tire of the bicycle is kind of starting to intrude into the public way. I guess I just asked that you kind of study that space and make sure you have those spaces in there.
Yeah, because I don't even see the bike cutouts.
I don't either. And I was kind of trying to use this as a technical drawing versus the rendering, to try to see what the spacing really was. But, I just one, include the bicycle racks on the landscaping and make sure it has the room, and that you start to integrate that into your concept. In the back, I would echo staff's comment about those planters, and given the angled, that these spaces are now angled with these one-way sides, you may want to study, instead of that being a rectangular space that's right there in the middle of the spaces, that if you're using a palm, maybe it's a diamond more in the corner. You kind of see that along the building side with that sawtoothed edge. Maybe that where that tree occurs is more in the in between towards the end of the space, where that tree can have some room, and you can kind of articulate around that so that it's not right there at the end of the space, and it's something that's starting to interfere with how the car parks in the space. Somebody may be a little nervous to get too close to it, and some people may just plow right into it. So maybe I like the idea, and I'd even encourage you to take some of those sawtooths and maybe break those up and get some palms up near the building. It's just a suggestion, but I'd really study those planters out in the middle of the parking. But overall, I think the project's really going in the right direction now.
And I want to echo the support too. I think architecturally, it's evolved very nicely, and it has a very strong vernacular feel to the forms of the building, and there's great context. I do want to reiterate again, and I know this is just probably a personal peeve on my part, but without the commitment of maintaining the two activated entries, the north elevation is going to become dead if in fact it is not become an active, at least in the manner that it's presented, is not going to become a very active area, and it becomes superficial, as we've witnessed on so many areas. And I will tell you too, if you're riding your bicycle, I'm thinking this, first of all, knowing this area and having lived here for years and years and years in this area, it's tough to find a cyclist coming along this road, but I would imagine that they would want a very secure place to chain the bike up, which is probably going to be on the other side of the building. Just personally, I know I can't dictate that, but that's just my feelings. I would love to encourage, as you continue toward the evolution of the design, some thought with regards to the aspect that possibly these elevations will not be active access into these spaces. And by doing so, you're even serving your client even more so by virtue of helping to delineate and define a marketable space. And I think that the idea that that second fenestration on that first building is being eliminated as virtue of the landscape plan, I think is a very honest aspect and approach to what's happening here. And maybe the corner building is the only one that's large enough, or the corner buildings are the only ones that are large enough to maintain the activated entrance from both the north and the south side. But that would be my suggestion, is that I don't know if you're going to have any other. I think it just becomes superficial, if not facadal. I don't know how to put that in a motion, to be honest with you, other than asking that you restudy and really dig deeply into the aspect of the service of this building and how it may respond more so to its site. As far as that facade is concerned, the north facade. But I'm probably, it sounds like I'm the only one, so I will certainly live by the wisdom of my fellow board members.
Well, that's a tough one because I think that in terms of an urban plan, I think the thought is that maybe one day, maybe that Maybank becomes populated in a different manner.
I've just seen it with the Standard. I've seen it with the other apartment complexes over there. And yeah, I'm optimistic that it will. And I know that we have great minds in the planning department moving it in that direction. And there's no reason that it can't adapt in the future. But right now, all I would ask is that the applicant study that north elevation in a manner that may allow a tenant not to activate the north side with an entry. As far as the two interior units are concerned. I mean, this is certainly an option, and we all provide those options in the past, but what if they don't do it? What does it look like then? Is that a fair approach? Or not?
No, I think that it's a fair question, especially going from conceptual to preliminary. And I think that the way I would is just that is study the activation or lack of activation of the Maybank facade. And
I could live
all we
with
can
that.
do is ask.
Yeah. It would just be nice to see an alternative if they don't activate those two interiors. I mean, it would be nice to at least see what an alternative might be. So Andy, I could live with that language.
What was the rendering? Did the rendering show like some sort of yoga studio or something there? I mean, I know it's just speculative, but I just wonder, since it's inset, it just seems like that might set itself, Pilates and low country.
And I don't disagree, and it would be wonderful if it did. I guess what I'm asking is, what is an alternative if it's not activated?
What I think is kind of intriguing about the inset is it just gives more space to what would be between the building and the sidewalk, and it could become a small little courtyard or something for a tenant. Like if that were a dental group, I could see a couple of exam chairs looking out onto that courtyard, not necessarily sidewalks. And
well, I mean, Jeff, I'm sorry to interrupt, but I guess that given the atmosphere that we have today, where, let's just say it is a dental studio or dental office or something like that, having the opportunity for somebody to go outside and wait is starting to become more and more important. And even if they go through the front or come through the front or the parking lot side, well, we're kind of limiting the number of people that are in the office. Here's an outside space that you can wait in. Providing that opportunity, I think, could be important.
And I'm not advocating eliminating them. I'm just advocating just what would an alternative be if those entries aren't there.
I mean, I can take a shot at a motion. See, recommend conceptual approval with, or provide conceptual approval with staff comments 3 through 5, and then 7 and 8. Board comments to study the sidewalk termination and how that sidewalk, if it goes to the property line or terminates at the last bay. Study the activation or lack of activation, provide an option if it's not activated, of the Maybank facade and its entrances. continue to refine the landscape as it as it is presented on the Maybank side of the building, provide flow and articulation of the landscape beds, and study the material that is provided up front.
Could you repeat that one, Andy?
Yes, is to study the landscape plan on the Maybank side, to study the flow of the beds and the plant material provided in relation to the building. How about that?
Sorry, study the landscape plan on the Maybank side, the flow
of the landscape material and the relationship of the material provided to the building.
Okay.
And just to kind of elaborate on that, I'm just talking about some of those plants maybe want to be more architectural on that side versus what's being presented right now. And I know that the number 8 and staff is to study those planters, but I would like to in the parking lot, but I'd like to expand on that to say, as a board comment, to study their locations and potentially providing additional planters along the sidewalk of the building. Does anybody else have any
I
other
had
items?
one.
Yeah.
Could you add a comment that they should provide a preliminary grading plan at the next submittal to address how the grade change will occur from Maybank Highway to the finished floor?
Sure.
Thank you.
Did you talk about the bike racks in there?
Oh yes. Also to provide to make sure that the bike racks are shown on the landscape plan and that they have enough room to get the bikes off of the public walks.
Got it. Okay. So we have a motion for conceptual approval with staff comments 3 through 5, 7, and 8. Board comments: 1, study the sidewalk termination on Maybank. 2, study the activation or lack thereof on the Maybank facade and entrances. 3, study the landscape plan on the Maybank side, the flow of the landscape material and its relationship to the building. 4, study the location of the planters and potentially provide additional planters along the building. 5, provide a grading plan at the next submittal. 6, show bike racks on the landscape plan and ensure that there is enough room to use them properly. That cover it, Andy?
Yes, I think so.
Okay. Is there a second?
I'll gladly second it. This is Dinos.
Okay, thanks, Dinos. I will call roll. Jeff?
Yes, in favor.
Aaron?
Yes, in favor.
Michelle?
Yes, in favor.
And then I am also yes in favor.
Great. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you,
All right, have a good
everyone.
day.
Thanks, Lossie.
Thanks.
Thank you. All right, y'all
Good
have a
night.
good one. Thank you.
Thank you. You too.
Well, thank you, everyone. It's good to see everyone.
Thanks, everybody. It's
And
good to see you guys too. I was having technical problems and I actually didn't have sound until like we were starting the first application. So if you were trying to talk to me before then, that's why I didn't respond. But it's good to see you all. Everybody looks happy and healthy.
And thank you for tolerating all my comments there on that facade. Y'all were always as graceful and as respectful as possible. Thank you.
Yeah, and Christopher, thank you for coming.
Yes, Christopher.
Yep.
Always a pleasure.
Appreciate it.
You
All
guys
right.
have a good Super Bowl week.
Thanks. And
You
hey,
too.
I don't
Thank
want
you.
to belabor our discussion, but Dinos, you bring up a great point. And we've looked at these applications a lot. These come up a lot where there's parking, and then the building and then the street. And it's a valid question. And I don't, it sometimes it starts with zoning, I don't know where it starts, but I feel like if we want to ask for options, I think that's a fair request as long as we start to do it early and do it more consistently. Because I can see an option. I can see a successful option out there. Whether or not it comes back the way I'm thinking is the question, right? But I think it's a legitimate ask, and I feel like we should work to ask for that, going forward. I hope that the applicant isn't peeved that, oh God, now I've got to come up with another option. But if you're designing a spec space, I think that it's really up to the onus of the designer to create architecture that works for any condition.
Yeah.
Well, that was so much more eloquently than I put it, I believe. But it's a great project. I mean, it's architecturally, it's come a long way, like you guys said, landscape-wise. It's a wonderful project, and I know Lossie will do a great job as he goes forward with it. But thank you, Michelle. And thank you, guys. Always a pleasure.
Yes, thank you, everyone.
Yeah.
Have a good rest of the night.
Bye, good night.
Bye.
All right, bye-bye.